So, to get decent audiophile sound quality out of a pair of IEMs, you need to spend a load of money on a set of earphones from a well-known manufacturer, right? Think again. These $20, £20 IEMs have changed the game so comprehensively, it's really quite insane. Hey audio geeks, and welcome back to the channel. So you might have heard about Sevenhertz, the relatively new chi-fi company who brought us the awesome timeless planar magnetic IEMs last year. Now that set of IEMs redefined what you could expect for the £200, $200 price point, but £200 is a lot of money, right? Well, how about a much lower price? I don't know, £20, $20? Can they pull off the same trick again? Meet the Sevenhertz Salnotes Zero. I'm not quite sure what the Salnotes branding is. Maybe it represents their budget arm. But anyway, it's made by Sevenhertz. So the Sevenhertz Salnotes Zero, which are a $20 set of IEMs aiming to take the budget IEM market by storm. Now, just a year ago, you wouldn't have had a great choice of IEMs for that price. But 2022 has brought us some fantastic budget offerings from Moondrop, Tantrum, and now Sevenhertz are looking to dominate the price point with the Zero. So anyway, I actually believed the hype. I wanted to believe the hype, so I went out and bought a set for myself. These are bought with my own money. They weren't sent to me for £20 here in the UK. I bought them on Amazon from Linsell, and the shipping was pretty rapid. They got here within a week. Now, there are many things that set the Sevenhertz Zeros apart from competitors, as we'll see in a minute. But the first thing you'll notice is a somewhat playful and refreshingly different design of the IEM shells. Now, I went for the rather cool blue colorway, as you can see, but black and white versions are also on offer if you fancy a more sober, conventional look. Whichever one you go for, you'll get the weird but supremely comfortable shaped IEMs. The laser-etched metal faceplate really is very attractive, and amazingly at this price point you actually get a very good detachable 2-pin cable. Remember, neither the Moondrop Chew, which costs the same, nor the Tantrum Zero have a detachable cable. Now, despite looking a bit cheap and plasticky, the IEMs have stood up to rough daily use really well, and they're also really light. You can see that Sevenhertz have cut costs of both the packaging and the included accessories. For example, you don't get any form of a case and only a limited selection of silicone ear tips, although these two are fabulously colourful. Where they haven't cut corners though is in the sound quality department, because what we're getting here is a phenomenally tuned, natural sounding single dynamic driver IEM whose performance utterly blows away the competition and even beats sets costing twice as much. So let's look at the frequency response graph, and we get a pretty neutral presentation with just a little bit of bass uplift. The mid-range is as close to flat neutral as you can get, then we get a little upper mid-emphasis and some controlled treble excitement. So bass monsters, these most definitely are not. They're nowhere near as bassy as the Sevenhertz Timeless, for example, nor do they have the liquid mid-bass speed and thump of the dedicated mini subwoofer in the Truth-Ear Zero, which I looked at recently. However, there's more than enough bass to give left field's Song of Life, for example, the required energy, especially when the track transitions into its euphoric and somewhat frantic second part around the 3:40 mark. It's a much more evolved and tasteful bass than something like the KZ ZSN Pro X's, for example. If you are all about the bass, though, you might want to avoid these. You might find them a bit bass light. Now, the mids are probably the best feature of the Zeros. They are just beautifully balanced. Vocals are pitched perfectly in the mix, being very slightly forward, but they're never submerged under a wall of sound. Male vocals have the required depth and grittiness. That, for example, Mark Lanegan's weathered growl on Queens of the Stone Age's excellent album Songs of the Deaf, I think it was from 2002, classic album, has all the gravelly grandeur that he was famous for. R.I.P. Mark Lanegan, fantastic. Female vocals too sound marvellous. So for example, Juanita Stein's vocals on her wonderful Snapshot album sound beautifully airy without coming across as shrill or shouty. Now, if you like a more harmon-tuned, more forward vocal, you might find the Zero's a little bit more laid back, but I actually really love the vocals on here, both male and female. Now the supremely well balanced mids mean that even large-scale orchestral pieces like Stravinsky's classic system tester, the Firebird, sound suitably integrated and immense. Now if there is any criticism of the tuning, it's perhaps at the very top of the mid-range and lower treble is a little bit bright, but for me it doesn't stray into fatiguing territory. Now if you are particularly sensitive to fatigue around the 3 kHz frequency, you might find these a bit much. Overall, I would say the treble is very smooth though, and adds the right amount of zing to lively tracks like Muse's Butterflies and Hurricanes. Talking about Muse, by the way, do check out their brand new album, The Will of the People. I've only listened to it a few times over the weekend, but so far I'm absolutely loving it. Some great Muse classic tracks on there. Anyway, back to the Zeros. So the tuning is excellent. How about the technicalities? Well, I would say that they're not as stellar as a tuning, but still unbelievably good for $20. So timbre is excellent and avoids the pitfalls of, for example, the metallic sound that you get with cheap BA drivers. The only place it can get a little unnatural for me is high-pitched electric guitar solos, and here we are talking about a degree of grittiness that you just don't get on something like the Moondrop Starfield, for example, also a dynamic, single dynamic driver IEM. Soundstage is okay, it's average, and imaging is okay as well. Now detail retrieval is pretty good, but not amazing. You can still pick out little nuances in complex tracks if you're concentrating, but again, it can't keep up with something like the Moondrop Starfields. But hang on a minute, these cost $20, and the Starfields, still love these by the way, they're looking a bit weathered now, but I absolutely love them. These are $100, £100, so £20, $20, $100, £100. And, you know, it's ridiculous that I'm even comparing the two. But look, that is the thing here. The Zero is so good that you end up comparing it to much more expensive sets because, in my opinion, there's nothing below about the $60 mark that can compete with it. I prefer it to the tuning of, for example, the Truth Ear Zero, which we looked at, another Zero, which we looked at last time. Although I do like that set for listening to electronic tracks. I think it also displaces my previous $50 favourite, the Tin T3 Plus, although that set probably sounds a little bit smoother in the upper mids and has a little bit more warmth in the lower mids as well. Now the Sevenhertz Zero is a great all-rounder and it'll suit most types of music. Would I take it over the Starfields? No. The Starfields are technically much more proficient in terms of imaging and soundstage. They're also less harsh in the upper mids and lower treble. Although, for example, the cable on the Starfields is much worse than the cable that you get with the Zero. So look, before I get too carried away, all I can say is great sound, great build, supreme comfort, detachable cable, $20, £20, zany colour. Go snap up a pair and use them as your daily beta IEMs. Look, if disaster strikes and you accidentally put them through the washing machine, you won't cry. The only reason not to get them is if you're into anime girls adorning your IEM cases, because the Zero's case is refreshingly plain and boring. There you have it, a clear gold award for the Sevenhertz Salnotes Zero. And if you're after a pair of IEMs, just don't hesitate, just go and get these.